Yeah, Birdside does have an awful lot of different kinds of writers, and that's fine. Um, but I find that usually in various writing communities that a lot of people will get hung up over what they consider like conventional rules versus like, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. In the grand scheme of things, it all comes down to what you as the writer and the reader want. Because if you happen to combine both, if you happen to be a writer and a reader, well, you'll have some overlap in certain kinds of wheelhouses with other writers, but you won't have full synchronization unless you yourself are writing whatever you want to write. Like I was saying earlier, I can't expect somebody to go out there and make the uplift protocol for me. I have to do it. If I want something that 100% caters to what I, K.M. Abel, want, then yes, I will have to make it myself. I can't rely on other people to try to cater 100% to what I want. I have to do it. Now, you can find writers where you can overlap fairly easily, maybe like 60 to say 80%. That can happen. And they might go off in directions that you wouldn't agree with, but if you have enough overlap, then you can usually be like, well, if I was writing this series, I would have gone off in this direction. Well, then write a series where you go off in the direction you want to see. Even though it's like beating a dead horse, there's some aspects of Babylon 5 that I wish would have been changed, to give people more optimum ending. So what am I doing? Oh, here we go with Uplift Protocol. I'm going to give many of the good guys, like the real big principal good guys, a nice send off into the sunset, because that's what I want to see. There's no really big, hard, fast rules, really. It comes down to a writer's preferences. Some writers love first person. Some love third person. Some love their short, choppy sentences. Some love paragraphs of stuff. Now, if you balance certain kinds of techniques, yeah, it will probably attract more readers depending on what kind of techniques you use. But it also depends on what's your overall purpose for making the book. Do you want to more cater it towards general market, which means you'll have to say, in my case, for the genres I like, what's paramount in a lot of them right now? Lit RPG, gaming, isekai, lit RPG, lit RPG, lit RPG, lit RPG, and harem. Like a whole lot of that stuff is just exploding everywhere where you can't really escape it from most general searches. It's going to pop up. That's the current overall big hitter when it comes to general market, but it's also drowning out people because that's the bulk of the general reading market, at least from what I can see of various algorithms going nuts on Amazon. And also, like anything else, a lot of romance and the romance subgenres, which is really erotica, that has a lion's share of readers because most books, in general, will cater towards women between the ages of 20 and 60. Because a lot of them will start reading, eroticas fairly young, and it'll stay with them until their 70s or something. For some people, not all. Mysteries are another really big hit with women. The Agatha Christie's and all that sort of thing. Even some of the Dean Koontz type of books. Yeah. So romances and mysteries genuinely do have the big damn elephant in the room lion's share of everything. So you have to ask yourself as a writer, are you going to write towards what's considered the most market viable stuff right now? Which for me, it wouldn't cater to what I really want. I'm not really interested too much in lit RPG or majority of isekais. Yakov's books are an exception because he's going a bit more of the old school route where it's not like this clueless protagonist that's shuttled off into another world, or the fact that the protagonist starts off as a hardcore gamma loser and somehow gets to reform himself into what they think is like the ultimate Chad in the other universe, and it's just like, oh god. That's the reason why even CJ's books with the more isekai bent stick out to me, because he picked protagonists that are more geared towards, like some of them might have a few social awkward moments to them, but the majority of his protagonists are kind of like Joe Schmo and Sally Sue get caught up in an isekai, but they're not complete losers from our world. They were just regular people, maybe slightly above average, or even maybe really specialized in one kind of area, but he doesn't make characters that are like woe is me down in the dumps losers and they have to go to another world to improve themselves. They were already pretty decent in the regular world and they get transferred over. I think sometimes it comes down to like people want to be able to stand out and like create some sort of new writing convention. Like I want to be like known for thinking outside the box and something brand spanking new, but I still go back to that idea of like we've been telling stories since we were cave people, and there's not much other stuff we can really retread. There's only so many different ways you can really tell a story, so don't worry about being original. You can take the various ingredients that you enjoy from different movies, different games, whatever, and you'll have to just by trial and error and writing something every day, figure out what kind of techniques you personally prefer. So again, some techniques are more marketable than others. Some techniques will gain more mainstream attraction than others. But yeah, you got to start off somewhere. And usually with writing, you just got to start off with writing. Again, Empress Teresa is an example of what you have with a rough draft that he has a very, very rough story, but you can see how the techniques are being not as utilized as one would like, but it is a fairly important writing tool, so you can basically look at it and see like, okay, what would work for me versus what won't. For me, I like shorter chapters, more to the point. A lot of pulps are usually very rarely more than 250 pages generally. Now, when I was younger, Behemoth books, I usually read them. But nowadays, it's a rare exception, like kind of like Galaxy Ascended, where I'll read something that's like 500 plus pages. But see, the thing is, Galaxy Ascended has good pacing. It goes like boom, 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 carrying the plot forward. It doesn't meander. And again, all of this stuff is like my personal preferences as a reader and a writer. Take it as you will. There's no hard and fast rules. There's just stuff that will catch more eyeballs. I personally like to have smaller paragraphs, and then with Upload Protocol, I do little bits of dialogue. I break up some stuff with shorter sentences, especially if Eliza's trying to describe a little bit of an emotional reaction to something, that's ticking off her empath setup. Because even in that regard, like, I don't make her omniscient. She has like basic, to the point description of things for the most part. Now, when I go back through and do the bigger edits, I'll probably add or subtract where I need to, and maybe add in a little bit more descriptors. But for right now, I like the boom, 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 boom pace that I'm going at with Uplift Protocol. Not every reader would enjoy that. Some readers want more tactile information. Some of them want more scene setup. It's just that a lot of modern trends have gotten everybody geared mostly towards making that big behemoth. Like the 13 books I'm going to have with this series, it'll probably hit 1.5 million words at some point. But the 13 books, the longest one is the initial book 0. That one's about 400 pages. Everybody else is clocking in around 250 to like maybe 300, if that. And some of them are like maybe 270 pages. But you put all those books together, and yeah, that makes a pretty interesting saga right there. But overall, I just like stuff just like get to the point, let me keep going. I like being able to get a few chapters in, like say before work, and I'll even link it below. Star Warden does a good job of that. Like boom, 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 boom. You know, again, my preference. How about you guys? You guys have any overall big preferences? Because no matter how you tackle it, there's going to be people that don't like particular tropes. There's going to be writers that absolutely adore particular tropes. There's going to be writers that prefer the, whole down in the dumps kind of J.R.R. Martin outlook. There are going to be writers that prefer a more Lindsman outlook. There are going to be writers that prefer a more pulpy outlook, or say like, in the case of like The Shadow and things like that, where it's like they distill an archetype down to its basic components, and then you can grow some stuff from there. It's all a big smorgasbord. I mean, I wouldn't honestly take anybody's advice, even my own advice, as like you have to adhere to this gospel. It's like, no, it's just a layer or a tier of stuff where I prefer X, Y, or Z over, say, what most mainstream stuff is doing. Because most mainstream stuff is on a deconstruction kick. The superversive wants to reconstruct. So that's where my camp is always going to fall into.